SATSANG 2 Part 2 October 17, 2019. So there are some who still have questions, I think. Or things to say. So let's go then. Who wants to talk, or ask, or say something? Sister, I wanted to thank you very much. Sister, I wanted to say that we didn't have vehement during the songs, I really felt fame. Yes, there are some who have had dolphins. Sister, songs they are beautiful. Silence. The satsang of silence. Go ahead, Jean-Marc. Brother, I wanted to say, for me, this session is for me a bigger lesson on acceptance, and, while we were with a cave visit, I felt, I can't say why, no matter what, Omrayam was lecturing me on acceptance, and so, he insisted all afternoon. I didn't really understand where it was going, and then I said to myself, I have to accept what's going on, something, and then something happens. Without knowing how or why, it bothered me a little bit, and I thought to myself, I have to accept. And then, it was the next day that it jumped out at me, but yes, it's acceptance. I had a lot of work to do on acceptance. That was what blocked me, and well, some events of the past also, that I had the impression that I sometimes had a ball and chain attached to my ankle, since I had to accept that too for it to dissolve, and that it was the only way to dissolve my old attachments of the past. And in what you say about OMA, what is incredible is that since then, we've been saying a little less than a year, when OMA is making a pipeline, because now, almost systematically, it follows people after that in an incredible way. Brother. In the night, he followed me. Laughs. This is not a joke. For example, in Portugal, to take a present example, where Jacqueline was there, our organizer, Christina, who is a strong woman, very straight, very direct, after the meeting, she can no longer sleep, that is to say that every night, there are biding OMA who bother her, give her things to do all the time. She works 15 hours a day, it's every day, every night, they come to tell her, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. It's unbelievable. That is, as soon as he has had contact, even remotely, even people who sometimes listen to OMA, especially for people who launch an idea, for example, Christina is part of the foundation and they forced her to do things, it's incredible. And it is always a surprise for me to see that there are people, even at a distance, I repeat, but especially when we are present, for the organizers or people who have ideas behind their heads that go in the direction of a gape, they are always there to work with people, but gently, of course, but especially at night. It's surprising, we come to tell them, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. So, we're really helped, as Daniel said, the intelligence of the light, yes, that's right. But it's impersonal, that's what's there right now, and I assure you it's not like that, it's not for. As soon as we're really in acceptance, they burst in every possible way to help us, it's really evident. There is no need to look for contact. There are people who would come to see OMA, hear it, no, as soon as there is a person, an individual who, for one reason or another, personal, family, professional, wants to promote the good news, they rush into the rift and they do not let you go. We see it for the organization of internships, even if we do not hear them, they are there, yes, indeed. This is very concrete, especially OMA and Baidu, who are the two main players in what is at stake at the moment. Fairham is different, because the codes have been put in the water, in all the waters and so on, all the brothers and sisters who were with the water this summer, next to the water, in the baths, in the lakes, in the rivers, in the seas, in the oceans, we feel that, it is obvious. The whale song, I remind you, has changed since August 2019, at the end of the celestial wedding, scientists know it. Sister, 2009. What? Sister, 2009. Yes, August 2009, at the end of the celestial weddings, After August 15th, the whale's song changed profoundly. However, you know that whale singing is, as I explained briefly, Apotheose, i.e. frequencies that impact matter and consciousness. And as they said, they informed the water with remembrance, they awakened the water with the memory of the first dream. Water is fire, hydrogen and oxygen. It is the first matrix of life, of course, since it is even said that water is the first liquid crystal of creation. You have it in the Bible, Berachat bar Elohim Tchemaim Vetate Hayats, the Spirit of God was floating on the waters. Mirror water, reflection water, water of mystery, water from above and water from below, and whales have done a tremendous job. When we say whales, you know that there are many kinds of whales, it essentially concerns whales. And you know that there are many whales leaving this plane right now, they are all disappearing except one variety. That I learned a short time ago and it's not surprising, it's the blue whale. The blue whale is a giant whale it is the largest mammal that has ever existed on Earth. It reaches up to 170 tons for 35 meters, it is larger than a dinosaur. And we didn't see it in the St. Lawrence. The whales are right. A week before to be with us, there were 40 of them. They've never seen anything like it before. And the blue whale, it was a little further away, it took longer to get there, so we couldn't see it. But among the Indians, with whom we were, because we slept among the natives there, native peoples, there was a friend who interviewed, who made a video about the shaman she met. Because she stayed longer there. And he did tell her that, when you meet the blue whale, it's something. Already, the whale is shocking. When you see a whale, it's something exceptional in terms of what happens. The last time we went out to sea was not in Tarifak, but in Kentong Rusalem. We were not a group like us, there were children, there were more than 80 of us on the boat. The children were playing, jumping in all directions, of course, on a huge catamaran, and, as soon as the whale was announced and we saw the whale's breath, everyone, a great silence. There is something going on, there is no question about it. And the blue whale, what the shaman who had met the blue whale said, he said that there is nothing that can reach the level, not energy, but total consciousness, that the blue whale. And it is the only whale that is not extinct for the moment, since it will remain until the moment. It's a whale, not the fin whale, which can weigh 20 tons, 27 tons, which is already huge when you see it at sea, but the blue whale is a breath that is so powerful and its song is so powerful that it resonates from everywhere in the waters. Why I said that, I don't know, but anyway, to complete what you were saying. So, the blue whale is the only one that does not disappear, it is normal, it is the last one to disappear. All the others, indeed, are disappearing at high speed. In fact, Feham said so. So, to tell you that the whale is really the grandmother's, it's at another time, in the first dream, even if the first dream was not in the water. Water was not the same structure as today, it was very ethereal, it was what we called on Earth, what we called Panga, it was long before Lemuria, it was part of the first dream of creation, the moment when geneticist mothers, as we have said, brought the crystal matrices to Earth, which made it possible to organize life, that is, a conscious life within forms that had the ability to move. We walk, even if we don't steal, so we steal a very, very special arrangement of the dream. That's it, compared to whales. But the whales gave us the information. Their presence, their singing, I said, that even scientists have noticed these frequency changes, it has become much more serious, their sounds, and they spread much further. In other words, they managed to circle the Earth, not with a single whale, but by relaying, they managed to cover all the waters. Moreover, Feham had said it and the scientists noticed it, and as if by chance, it started just after August 15th, after the delivery of the Metatronic keys, the famous OD, is, Al, which all of us sang, that's it. One other thing. Sister Jean, look, we could say that this blue whale, then, the one that remains until the end, would be a kind of anchoring, a kind of, yes, I think she's here to close the scene. The whale's breath, contrary to what we think, is not water that comes out when it goes very deep, if you will. There is a compression of the lungs, and when it goes up and blows, it is oil that it blows. Sister. Krill oil. Krill oil, exactly. She only eats krill. A fin whale eats 5 tons of krill per day. Once upon a time, someone who had left a comment or a message saying, "But it's shameful, you're going to eat all the krill." This is completely stupid, since krill represents 10% of the global biomass, that is, of all the living systems that exist on Earth. Krill, this tiny shrimp, is 10% of the biomass. One thing also that those who have seen the whales have noticed, there can be a river, the St. Lawrence, or a rough sea, when the whale, and even at depth, in diving, the surface of the water where it is at depth, even if it is several hundred meters, is perfectly calm. It is impressive. That's how you spot them when you're very close. It's not the breath. You see an oil slick on the water that's like crystallized, that is, there can be waves around it, but the place where the whale is, even several hundred meters away, generates that on the surface. It's really something amazing. What? There's no other word for it. The whale has nothing to do with the dolphin. The dolphin, well, it's serious, but the whale is ancestral. It's really, I'm talking about what we call the gulpers, because you have fake whales, well, what we call the pilot whale, for example, it's not a real whale. It has teeth, it eats whales, what is commonly called the whale. The whale is a gulper, that is, it has no teeth, it spends its life swallowing water, where there is the krill that gets caught in its belly, and is swallowed, 5 tons per day. So it regulates a lot of things, and that is something that even scientists today are beginning to understand. Since, for example, we realized that when whales, their song, the whale's song, was a pratody, that is, that it was harmonics and frequencies that acted on living things completely, not only in water, and that is proven. This is something that is perfectly proven, and I think that the notion of mass, their material, that is to say that, for the fin whale, as I told you, a fin whale, it goes from 15, 20 tons to 27 tons, is not nothing, and it is animals, as they say, animals, but which, I remind you, the heart of the fin whale weighs 200 kilos. So you can imagine that the song of cardiac coherence that we call the double terrace is absolutely gigantic. Our heart, I don't even know how much it weighs anymore, but it must be 200 g. The whale's heart is 1,000 times more important, and therefore, the electromagnetic field emitted by the whale is also 1,000 times, minimum, more important. This is what we call becoming, leaving the mind, leaving the person, finding the heart of the heart. It is nothing more than breaking the confinement of the precardium, something that is also known in osteopathy, and giving freedom back to the heart. It is something very concrete, just as the mystical processes, as I told you, are also identified in the brain, the processes of opening the heart and manifestations of the infinite presence, Shantinalaya, of presence and absence. All this terminology that has been used, if you will, corresponds to a biochemical, organic, cellular reality. 40,000 neurons in the heart, and it is the moment when you actually discover that you are not the mind, that you are not that person. There is the rupture of the myth of individuality, which is called the myth of immortality, which is located at the level of the epiphysis, the famous third eye. There is a shell around it. It is when you made poom, 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 we broke that, and then the information light. Of course, this is the process we followed with other dimensions, with the descent of the Holy Spirit in 1984. It is this light that descended, that pierced the sheath of the chakras, that reached the heart. It's exactly the same thing, and it's not something that only happens in energy, it happens in matter and not elsewhere. Brother. Physically, the precardium, the envelope of the heart. Yes, the envelope of the heart, what is called the meridian master of the heart, is first of all linked to the 6th chakra, that is, to confinement. It is the 3rd luciferic eye. It is everything that is, visions, that is, everything that is a projection of consciousness in the dream, is derived from this 3rd eye. That's why for the past year, we've been insisting heavily on stopping with visions. It doesn't mean blocking them, but you have to go through it too. It's also part of the acceptance. Because for beings who are in the energetic, in spirituality, it is very hard to release energy, or to release vibrations, or to release visions, and especially if they're right. Because in the Absolute, there are no visions, there is no form, there is nothing. That is exactly what Dr. Eben Alexander described to you, for example, and what all the people who live it describe, that famous black hole, which can still frighten many people. This is a home. Everything else is a dream. Without exception. This is inscribed in biology, it is inscribed in consciousness, and that is what I am telling you, when I have verified that the Absolute is the only truth. It is not a concept, it is not even the scientific explanation that I now have, it is the experience. That is to say, and today, there is no longer any need to go out, to go through all the dimensions, to live it. It is acceptance, as you said, it is silence. If you're able to be silent for 2 minutes, the true silence, you're free, without asking for anything. This is really what is happening today, and therefore the only way to be free. We agree with what you said, apart from acceptance, because acceptance is therapeutic. We have always been taught, especially in the 20th century, we are told, we must express emotions, we must find the causes. Yes, we did it in medicine, we did it in psychology, we did it in memories, in memory decoding, but it's useless, it's part of the Luciferian illusion, and it maintains the dream. To leave the dream is to accept that everything is a dream, and that only the immutable, which is immobile, the Tao as the Chinese say, or in this phys, the one which turns and is immobile in the center, is the same thing. For example, 30 or 40 years ago, I worked with Dr. Demise. We triggered trances, that is, we made people turn on themselves, a little like the Sphiz, to free them from their insistine within their personality. So of course, we didn't go to Agape because, at the time, it was impossible. I remind you that Agape, this state of the Absolute, there are not many people who have experienced it. Apart from Nisargadatta, Mahananda Moye, even Christ did not live it, because it was not possible. And now, it's possible for everyone, but there are all these conditioning, all these operating habits, all these energies. Energy is neither good nor bad, but it is inscribed in the matrix, in the dream, and belongs to what is called the Luciferic illusion, which has only been to project consciousness in order to enclose it in what are called time loops, memory loops, karmite loops that have no space for solution. Moreover, even in original Tibetan Buddhism, in Vajrayana, for example, the Lama Anagarika Govinda explained that only the Westerner was crazy enough to think that he had to pay for all the actions and reactions of all his past lives. It is a heresy, but we are so used to the laws of this world, to live in duality, that it is impossible to escape it. Today, yes, despite the presence of this duality. Brother, about the piercing of the hard envelope, is it Mikkel who pierces the hard envelope? Because, a few years ago, in the night, I almost died. There have been several piercings of heart, what is called the transfixion of love in Catholicism. It is, if you want that is perfectly described, it is the arrow that is unhooked in the heart, indeed, by the Archangel Mikkel, but there was also the metatronic impulse that arrived from behind, by the fifth dorsal, between the wings at Kiristi, therefore, and Christ also, the gate Kiristi. So this piercing took place many times, from front to back and back to front. This is what has, a little like the ionosphere and the three insulating layers of the solar system, magnetosphere, ionosphere and heliosphere, which have been gradually perforated since the celestial weddings to let the light pass, but even that was not enough, since there was Van Allen's belt which reflected infinitely in mirror all the archetypes to lock them up, too. So that's what needs to be understood, and that's what needs to be lived. That is, as long as you follow an archetype, even the most prestigious, through devotion, fervor, prayer, even contact, you cannot be free, because of the circumstances of this world. And these beings had nothing to do with it, they were saints, really, but it was not enough, because holiness is defined in relation to this world, mystical powers, to more or less extraordinary manifestations, but no manifestation, even the most extraordinary, allows you to understand that all this is a dream. Acceptance, as they say, is not only the acceptance of one's past, the acceptance of one's wounds, the acceptance of one's temperament, of one's personality, it is also the acceptance that all this has no reality. It's the only way to be free, especially today. Remember what I was saying earlier, all the vibratory processes that many have lived through and that have been developed by Ad and others, have been the intermediate step. No one could know the purpose, not even the elders, not even Marwan Moye, not Peter Deneuve, not even Bernard from Montreal, because it was not to be known until the conditions were met. The conditions met were the liberation of the earth in 2011. It's old, it's been 8 years, but it was necessary to reach a certain number of people who were living the self to liberate this absolute, not only for a few individuals, as was the case in 2012, by the wave of life, but that it really be the information that I call the good news of the zero-time. Zero-time information, which is accessible to everyone. There is no retribution, there is no karma, there is no fault, there is no error, whatever one thinks of it, whatever one lives by. All this does not exist, and like the short text, the 3 lines I read to you, by Gene Klein, who apparently lived the absolute in 1950, but he was not known, he did not leave great traces as to Nisargadatta, which is certainly the largest, the greatest being who has ever walked this earth. He did not create a religion, he did not create a movement, he did not create anything, he never wrote anything except a few poems when he was young, he only left his interviews. But all these were milestones, even the religions, even all the saints who passed away, they could only love His Holiness, but none of them told you that all this was an illusion. Nowadays, everyone can live it. But you cannot escape illusion. It is by accepting to live the illusion and knowing that it is an illusion, that you come out of the illusion, no other way. All you hold on to holds you as a fundamental law. Everything you oppose is reinforced, and this is a neuroscientific law. It is neither mystical, nor spiritual, nor energetic. And it's making its way, because there's nothing to understand, even if you have the scientific explanations. Once again, it is not because you know it, it is not because you have demonstrated it, it is not because it is known, that it is realized, it is because you are living it. And there's no other choice, and it doesn't change anything. You have to understand, that's what I say all the time, what I said in Quebec, you know, I'm not a master, or anything, I'm the same as each of you. As Buddha said in his lifetime, the only difference between you and me is that I know that I am God. You don't know it yet. In that, there is God in the sense that everyone can think it, in abstraction, but there is no creator, there is no creature, all that is only a dream. And of course, as Buddha said, as long as you look at what is happening in the prison, you cannot know that there is something outside the prison. The fish in his aquarium does not know that there is anything other than the aquarium, since he has only known that. One other thing. Sister. The Sphere Masters also say that this world is a dream and we dream. Yes, but do they live it? Certainly, yes. What I can say for having approached some of them is that they live the self, they are in devotion, they are in the self, but they also say it. Neuroscientists also, physicists also, tell you today, concretely. We're in a computational simulation. As Ken Reeves said, the film Matrix is not a film, it's a documentary, it's exactly that. And he said in Matrix, remember, what Neo the Bald said to Neo the Bald, I forgot his name, he said, they will do everything to save this Matrix, because they do not know the truth, they will do everything to preserve it. This is also what you have in the allegory, Plato's cave, the people who do not look at the light behind, which comes to light, but their shadow on the bottom of the cave. One day, one of them turns around and then, what does he do? He tells the others, turn around. The others don't want to turn around, and then there's one coming out of the cave and saying, there's no cave. But this one, he's necessarily getting his ass kicked. The great advantage that there is today, it could only happen like that, is that humanity, the human being, we're really talking about the human being, all of us, is both at the origin and at the end of creation. When I say that we have experienced everything, yes, it is the truth. We don't need to remember it, we just have to accept it, again, and it's really so simple. That is, it is a total neurophysiological, biochemical, energetic and spiritual mechanism. It requires an understanding that, and by living it, of course, all these guides, all these gods, all these masters, all these gurus, even if they've been useful at one stage, cannot lead us into the truth. Truth is not of this world, so how can we imagine finding a solution in something that has no reality? None. The only way out is to live it, and today, it would be easy. You don't need to live it when you leave the body, to live the wave of life or all the crowns, simply by accepting it. It's not a pun, it's the strict truth. To accept the unknown is to reveal the unknown. But of course, when there are visions of the black hole, remember what I said, conscience cannot accept that it does not exist. The ego, in psychology, we speak of the skin self, that is, we're limited by a form, we believe we're this body. The first part of Baida's teaching was the rebuttal. You are not that bag of meat, you are not that body. It was the first step, de-insistine, that is, creating the observer, the one who is the witness, who sees. Today, no one has a problem with the mind, even when he has mental problems, since he says he sees his mind. I guarantee you, for those who remember back then, no one understood what that meant. Everyone was identified with their own minds, with the little bike, as OMA used to say. Now, even the one who has never heard of energies or anything, globally, at the collective level, we are able to see our mind, even if we are still subject to it. That is the great difference. Before, the identification was, in this world, real, but has no substance. And it creates a lightening, it creates a relaxation, which allows the light to penetrate. Blessed are the cracked, the light will penetrate. Wait, without that, the translators, they'll burn me down. Sister, when you talk about, mind. Sister, no, wait. When you talk about, I mean when you say that all this is just an illusion, etc. But if we don't understand it, you know what I mean. You can't understand that. Sister, that's it. Once again, understanding is the lived experience, and even if you don't live it, you just have to accept it, honestly, sincerely. You have no way of proving it, except by accepting it. We really turn into the knot, I would say, of the problem, when we say that acceptance is the key, and Jean-Marc tells me that Grandpa showed him that, it's evident. Today, the primary anomaly no longer exists. I will not go back over what happened the year after, where this primary anomaly was housed at the energy level. It was very simple and it was invisible until now. In all the times when I went out in naked consciousness, I saw everything, but really everything, all the energetic structures, subtle auras, not in my body there, but outside, and people saw me also in the body of light, and I took the body of light that I wanted. I could be Christ, I could be Thor, I could be Buddha. It's like I was wearing a costume, and it was only a costume. This body is a suit. It is a temple, yes. Because it is inside, so it is a temple, but it is also a bag of meat. There is no antinomy. And the problem is that in this skin self that we call pseudo-individuality, the ego, but not in the pejorative sense, in the sense of the person, good the person, you know very well that in Greek persona it is a mask, a habit, a clothing, the truth, it is not there. All spiritual teachings, for a very long time, have insisted on the soul, but the soul is a scam, worse than this world. The soul is really the astral, everything that is, as Bernard of Montreal said, astralized. Spirituality is inscribed in the astral, in the Luciferic illusion, in its entirety. Nevertheless, we're in it. And, here too, the acceptance that it is an illusion and that despite everything we're in it, is a huge step towards freedom. And then, well, you can only see what they describe on Facebook, for example, about the international meetings that there will be. It's always the same speech. Whether you look at Betty Quirion, whether you look at Yolanda Durance-Ramo, Christian Singer, there are many women who express themselves on this, because they are direct, they are much simpler, it is not as constructed as Nassim Haramein with his astrophysics or as Eckhart Tolle with the present moment. They speak directly from the heart, even if they don't have the vocabulary, it's not important. What is important is what you convey beyond your words, and beyond concepts. And that, as we have said, is the way of childhood, it is the way of humility, it is to find one's humanity, it is as if one had made a great tour for those who are in spirituality with the different movements, the different religions, with the energies, with the chakras, with the stars, with the doors, with all the masters who deliver teachings, to realize that none of this allows you to leave history. It's all very well, when you have some divine mothers, in quotation marks, who spend their time hugging thousands of people, but it's never freed anyone ever. Krishnamurti has written some remarkable books, but do you know anyone who approached Krishnamurti who was free? None. Do you know a person, according to the writings and evidence we have from all the people who went to see Nisargadatta alive, who lived through what Nisargadatta said? No. No one. And yet, he had said, as I told you, my words cannot fail. Because he was talking for now. Christ was speaking for now. The messengers were speaking for now. There is no paradise, there is no hell, it's a huge hoax. Heaven and hell are held by the Ekans. Karma, what are called karmic lipikas, karma lords, are Ekans, and Ekans have as important a role in the myth of creation as geneticist mothers. But we had to have hatred in its confinement before we could actually live that we were really confined, and understand that none of this ever existed. And in astrophysics, we come to exactly the same conclusions. We're in a computer simulation, there is no time, there is no space, there is no distance. There is no such thing as a perfect mathematical construction. As Nisargadatta said, creation appeared one day, it will disappear another day, but all this happened at the same time. So it is futile today to try to improve. However, you have to take care of yourself, you have to take care of your body, that's obvious, because it's the vehicle, that's all. That doesn't mean we should neglect it, we're not all Marwan and Amoy who don't need to eat for 20 years, or a Martha Robin, eating a host every week. No. Today, we are asked to be fully alive. Fully alive, it is not going to take refuge in an ashram, or to a guru or a master, it is taking charge of your life and being as available as possible. You don't need anything else. If you're in this simplicity there is no reason why you should not be consumed with love, and without pain. The vibration, the access to the other subtle shots as they say, was essential to, as I was saying, rewind the film and find some of the elements that would guide us. And as Ebba said this afternoon that everything had been written and that we decided on the script, yes. It may seem hard to handle, but it's the strict truth. And this myth of immortality, it is so deeply rooted that all the more modern spiritualities, for example, at the beginning of the 20th century, after spiritualism, I am talking about Alice Bailey's teaching and all that, are total scams. The ascended masters, they have nothing ascended at all, they were stuck in the astral, in the same way as the elders when they ascended, as Omriam had told us, were put in a kind of bubble, in an intermediate dimension. There is no such thing. And the ships we're talking about in the other dimensions, are there to live the same event as us. They are ourselves, in another space-time that does not exist anymore. And, by living it, and by already accepting it, it creates a total aliveness, it puts you on availability for what, well to live, but also to live that all others without exception you. As Bhatti said, there is only you, and in fact, there is no one, there has never been anyone. And the only way to experience it the fastest was to explain it in length, breadth and depth. 1. The Little Way, The Way of Terezi. For those who are interested in the life of Terezi, read The Story of a Soul. It is fabulous. Terezi de Lisieux, History of a Soul. It is a big book like that which tells what she lived from day to day. There is no more powerful than what Teresa lived, in renunciation, in sacrifice, but also in this. She says it besides. These are the words she uses. She was talking about the consummation of love. And the consummation of love, we have all lived it, sometimes with extremely strong heat, but it is also a great sweetness after, once we have accepted, that nothing is tangible. But as we know, matter is made of emptiness. Brother. Gemma 2, Gemma Galgani. Gemma explained perfectly, yes, absolutely, and it is evident that there is no other possibility. It was a dream that was really well built, really well enclosed, really well dreamed, but it has no reality. And yet it is the only real one we know. And today, more than ever, the important thing is your availability for the life you are living. At that moment, when you are available in full acceptance of everything that is, that you understand that you can't change anything, that everything changes. But it doesn't change by your will or by a desire for anything, it's that the abandonment to the light of which Enel spoke to us in 2009, and the sentence he repeated all the time, Hergenungs, 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 here and now. This is what has been prepared even by authors who do not live the absolute like Eckhart Tolle, who only speaks to you about presence, but it is very important, because it is landmarks that have made it possible to arrive, at a certain number I would say, to soften the understanding and the experience of this dream. And that's what we're experiencing right now, that's what's so extraordinary. One other thing. And also, laziness. If you have the opportunity to be really lazy, not all your life, but some days, some hours, as they say vulgarly not to do anything, it's magic, because laziness, that is, not doing anything, having time to do nothing, it is something exceptional, in this world, I remind you, which is going faster and faster, which is saturated with information, laws, regulations, constraints, taxes, everything we have created ourselves, to achieve this. No one is responsible, no one is guilty. We all wrote it together, at the moment when we were really one, that is, at the first spurt of consciousness. Everything else is actually cinema, and a cinema in which we are part of the film, so there is no escape. Brother. So we created such a hellish end to get out of it. Exactly. It is as I was saying, for people who are seeing them coming and going between periods of joy and suffering of the body, even very serious, or mental suffering, it is in such a way that they are irremediably disgusted with consciousness. Not to punish anyone, but to make you understand that it's only a dream. There is no better expression. There is no better analogy than to say, well, now we are awake or not, it is as if, when you get up in the morning, you know that you have dreamed. But as long as you sleep, you don't know you're dreaming. It's the same thing. It's no more complicated than that. That's exactly what it is. Moreover, we now know that liberation is accompanied by changes in brain structures and neural networks, which is also perfectly proven. We know that there are what we have called the stars good and evil, attraction, repulsion. They are indeed neural circuits that start from the central tonsils and nuclei of the thalamus that are related to the feeling or idea of believing oneself a person, and that as long as one is not awake, one is always subjected to judgment, systematically, because the circuit of punishment is always stronger than that of reward. Only in mystics who have really lived mystical processes that can be identified in the brain, where the reward circuit becomes more powerful. It is kindness, it is the attention given to others, since the other is oneself. And as Christian Singer said before she died, when you are laminated by the disease, that you will die in a few days, she says, there is nothing, it is much more than that, we are really and concretely one in the other. This is what we are discovering today with what we call, not quantum physics, but quantum entanglement and string theory. on all sides where you lean. It is being demonstrated in the brain, in the sky, in mathematics, in physics, everywhere. You don't need religion, you don't need a master, you don't need a guru, you don't need to read, you need to be there, here and now, totally present, and in this posture of welcome, benevolence, acceptance. Even if you don't understand, even if it seems completely absurd to you, I promise you that it is the ultimate key. We had a lot of keys. We had Edurimis Al, the language of geneticist mothers. We had the revelation of the surname and first name of birth of this life. But the last jump, as has been said, the good news, we can bring it to everyone. When there are network resonances, you feel, well, what is happening here most of the time, but there is something behind it. It is not only the fire of the heart, it is not only the double terrace, it is freedom. As I said, this freedom is both internal and external. Whatever the constraints of our body, our age, our money, our wallet, our family, our profession, in short, all our living environments. And this agape resonance, which is this good news that is spreading, it spreads all the more easily because we are in this form of fluidity as we have experienced it there, in the encounter, where everything is done, where there are no more problems, there are no more hurtful things, and that is how it is. We see it in all countries. Since we have been traveling there for a year now, there is not a place where it does not happen like that. With different tones according to the organization, according to the people as well. Of course, you have peoples who are much more spontaneous than others. I said that when I was in Quebec, because the corpses are in the true brotherhood. Well, there are not many of them, there are only 8 million of them. They do not have social pressures like us, but they have remained as the French should have remained before the French Revolution. But there's no one you can blame, there's no one to blame. As Baba, the source, said, there is no saint without a past, there is no sinner without a future. It may seem hard to accept, especially in this period when there is so much violence, so much tearing in society, but it is intended, it is we who wrote it. There's nothing else. And from there, what happens? As I said, you become human again. You can't claim anything, to be a master, to be a guru, to be a teacher, you're nothing, and that's freedom. What does not mean to be nothing, to flogging oneself, it is to stay especially where you are, in your place, in your life, and you become life. It is frankly the simplest thing there is, and yet it is the hardest thing to accept by habits, because of consciousness, because of the myth of individuality, because of belief again, since we are in this vehicle, no longer to the body, but to ideas, to thoughts. One other thing. Sister, when you see that everything is a dream, that you live it, well, when everyone will really live it, since this is the agape pandemic, what will happen? What will happen is very simple. Until now, even in other dimensions, we have been told about stellar lines, dimensional planes, the vibratory assignment that was true, since no one knew what was going to happen. All this had to happen spontaneously on a given date, at a given moment, with given individuals who, I remind you that Eber preceded the dream, he went through all the dreams too, but we are all Eber. He is not an individual who is Eber only, it is everyone. Either is Eber, or there is no Eber, it is not possible. Sister, when everyone will really live it, when everyone will recognize it. So the moment when you are going to experience what was called the event, that is, the flash of light, whether it is galactic, which will be galactic solar, coming from the center called Sagittarius A, coming from the center of the galaxy, everything will combine, and everything will be associated. At the moment when you are going to live this famous white paradise, that is to say the disappearance of the form, I challenge anyone to want to inhabit a certain consciousness or a certain body or a certain world. It is impossible. And by the way, all those who are in this agape today, in a constant way, but you can never be fooled. Moreover, look, when we talk about the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, we knew that the way we died conditioned reincarnation. Today, this good news is being spread. You have all read testimonies, even if you don't believe in them and you refuse them, you're informed of them, that is to say, at the moment of death, when you see the family homes who will tell you, but no, stay there, You have to, but you'll go through it like the 5% of people who have had a MDE. You will go into the light, you will cross the light, and you will see that behind the light, there is nothing. The great everything is the nothing. So there is no doubt about it. The event now is inscribed on the astrophysical level, as everyone knows, the black holes that wander everywhere, but no one, I mean no one, whatever their state today, will be able to imagine, think or regain a shape, a dimension or another. We are perfect from all eternity. Sister, are we all going to leave at the same time? All, but not only on Earth, is all creation. So when I said that the first time, everyone, even the people who lived the trips with me in naked conscience, thought I was crazy. It's normal. Today you have proof, you have galaxies that are absorbed, you have black holes in the center of the Milky Way, you have the center of Sagittarius A that is starting to emit absolutely colossal pulsars, with exotic cosmic rays that no one knows, all that can be seen, and everything that we are going through on Earth. And, at the moment when this joy will appear, and we will live only this joy, the memory of what we are before creation, but I challenge anyone living the absence of consciousness and the absence of form, to want to imagine taking a given dimension or going to explore the dream. It's so evident. And by the way, that's what Nisargadatta said when he was alive, when you lived it, but you're no longer fooled. You're here, okay, I appeared one day, I will disappear one day, but as he said, the absolute order will never disappear. But this absolute eternal I has nothing to do with the person, nothing to do with the soul, nothing to do with the spirit, nothing to do with the worlds of manifestation, that is, the worlds of dream. There is no paradise, there is no hell, except the one we create ourselves. And there's no doubt about that. Among the countless brothers and sisters who live it, but imagine, they do not even imagine that they can or should be incarnated or ascended, or anything else. That's impossible. Only the conscience is asking itself these kinds of questions. But when you discovered a consciousness, you know it's your home. I invite you to read Eben Alexander's Proof of Heaven, who is a neuroscientist, because it is described perfectly. That doesn't mean that you haven't come to live your life, fortunately, without that you're on the run, you're in what's called depersonalization and derealization, which is a psychiatric syndrome. It's all the people who have read a bit of data and who tell you, this body will go for a coffee. But no, you're the one who's going to drink the coffee. You're in this body, so you can't say that it's this body that's going to drink coffee, you're who is going to drink it. The experience of unity, even without mentioning the absolute, should not be confused with derealization, which is a psychiatric syndrome, which is a flight from the dream. We cannot escape this reality, we can only assume it, in its entirety. And that, it brings sweetness, it brings joy, yes, indeed, even if it is not every day easy, we have the right to be constipated, we have the right to have a returning mind, we have the right, we must not imagine. Nisargadatta was a completely ordinary being, he never created an ashram, he never created a school, he never wore eccentric clothes, he never claimed anything else than what he was. This is also that true simplicity. As soon as you experience something, when you think you're this or that, you're wrong. The only fullness is the nothing, it is the truth, and the truth, there is only one. Brother, then the spirit is still. Of course, of course, of course. There's nothing there. From our personal point of view, it is the black hole as a person, the void, where there is no form, and yet it is not the shadow. At the limit we could say it is what is beyond the light, the Ein Sephor, what is behind, in front of or everywhere, but which understands the light and which understands all dreams. But that is not, as I explained, when you manage to keep yourself at the extinction of consciousness, at the edge of space, as they say at the edge of being and non-being, before the extinction of consciousness, you realize that your home is there. It is not in the worlds, it is not in the dimensions. Brother, the Absolute, I wanted to know that he still exists. You couldn't even know it existed, who told you about it? Even in Advait of Dainta, in Kashmir Tantrism, we have talked about what? We have talked about unity, non-duality, but unity is not the absolute. Unity has manifested itself, it is livable, it is the self, it is also spiritual pride and the one who lives the light and is convinced to be this or that. No, he who tells the truth cannot, is nothing. Of course, something comes from him, but he doesn't claim anything. As soon as a human being claims a position as a master, guru or teacher, he is a con man, in every sense of the word, even if he is unaware of it. This does not prevent you from having knowledge and using the knowledge in your work, in anything, it is not contradictory. But at that moment, you're in, what I call this natural humility, because you can't be otherwise. It is not an effort, it is not a driving effort, it is not a moral effort, it is a total relaxation. The sentence I read to you from Jean Colline, the quotes from Nisargadatta, everything he's been telling us for 7 years, everything I'm telling you too. I have nothing to sell, I don't need any students, no worshippers, no names. I recognize myself in everyone, it's something real. And it is not something that is moral, social or spiritual conduct, no, it is something that is evident when you live it, you can't do otherwise, even if you wanted to, it's impossible. Once again, that doesn't stop you from having fun with the energy, with the pendulum, talking to the trees, talking with the whales, on the contrary. You fully explore the dream, but you know that you are not the dream. And it changes everything, really. Because indeed, at that moment, questions may arise, as with everyone else, but what is called fear can no longer exist. This does not mean that you are Arnold Schwarzenegger who is ready to die, simply that's a creation which is also linked to neurotransmitters, linked to fear which are avoidance behaviors, the attitude towards the test, i.e. which are linked to serotonin, can no longer exist, can no longer manifest itself, or else in an extremely limited way in intensity and time. This is really the time for what is called autonomy. Autonomy is not depending on anything, and yet to depend on everything, because you are in a dream. It is the way of childhood. Terezi has lived it enough, explained it, translated it in her poems or in her life, in her short life, yet she worshipped Christ, no matter what Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, they are milestones, that's all. He said, don't turn my words into a religion. The first thing Ekans do, and those who like to control, is to create a religion. It was the same even for all the masters, in all the movements. There is a founder of a movement, and then it is systematically recovered. There can be no transmission. It's non-transferable. Look for example, at Master Ramchandra Babuji, in the Wise Myth Yoga, they fought afterwards for his succession. But there can be no affiliation. In the Advait of Dainta of Nisargadatta, it is a path where you are inserted into life. And look at everything that the ancients, the Universal White Brotherhood, have done. Look at Esho with his sect, they have all created sects, whether we like it or not. Krishnamurti said it, spirituality, already it is a fraud, but more if you organize it, then it is over. It's over, you create a dependency, you create a relationship of submission that cannot exist in liberty. Everyone is on the same level. No one is superior, no one is inferior, all these are social games linked to predation, what is called the Lucifer principle. There is a book about this in the United States, we are mammals and we are subject to the Lucifer principle. What is the Lucifer principle? It is the one who leads the other mammals in the group, it is the one who fucks first, eats first and has all the powers. That's exactly what you see at the top of every state. Brother, but Lucifer has been redeemed for a while. Who cares? Lucifer is a principle before, I said Luciferian principle, I didn't say Lucifer. The Luciferic principle is a principle of predation, and predation is constant. It is part of the dream organization. And fortunately there was that, so that forgetting would never, ever be eternal, since time anyway is an illusion, we had to find the initial movement again. The initial moment is the white paradise. It is the great galactic flash of light, which puts us in what has been called the event, the stasis, well, whatever, the call of Mary, the trumpets, well, everything we want, the shifting of the poles, everything we can imagine, but it is the collective moment of the real, and it can only be collective. It's still bullshit to think that you have to wait for the ifs, the time, or the moment. This was the case before, since there were no other possibilities. And it does seem incredible. When I started talking about the end of the dream of creation, no one accepted. Today, well, you have to realize that everything is consumed on Earth, but also in the universes, in the galaxies. And all this is happening at the same time. And yet, for example, Betelgeuse, who transforms himself into a super red giant and joins the radiance of Sagittarius, what is called the arrow of Sagittarius, which Nostradamus had perfectly described, which is located at 19 degrees 30 from Sagittarius, Sagittarius A, which is a huge black hole, which is beginning to be visible. Yet, if we see it today according to astrophysical conceptions, it happened millions and billions of years ago. No, it's being lived on Earth right now. And as it has always been said, for example, at the time of confinement, when the Nephilim left the Earth, Nephilim means torch of fire in Hebrew, so don't believe the bullshit written by the first person to talk about Nephir, it's Sitchin. Neither the Nephilim nor the Elohims are bad beings, they're monumental bullshit. Nephilim simply means torch of fire. They are beings of fire, the igneous fire. It is one of the first forms, which appeared at the time of the dream of creation. So the Nephilim, when they left the earth, left landmarks, the circles of fire, which were supposed to channel the light from Betelgeuse, which is their main dwelling place, Bethel, it is the house in Hebrew. This is where the Nephilim, the giants, whom we called the giants, knew because they were partly before the confinement, not cut off from their origin, that is, the source of consciousness, so they knew very well how it would end. And everything, absolutely everything today in science, in all sciences, in events, in the events of the earth and the cosmos, we are told exactly the same thing. Today, when I was talking about global extinction before the heavenly wedding, people thought I was crazy. Well, today, it's accepted in companies, everyone knows that, except that the average person shouldn't know that, and yet it's accessible everywhere. You see, well, in the media, they talk to you about extinction, the sixth mass extinction. You have a movement that has been created, Extinction Rebellion. Just the word makes you smile. How can you rebel against extinction? No, it is simply social engineering, that is, social programming, to bring the reality of the process into the collective consciousness. It's like what we call predictive programming in the MK Ultra, the Twin Towers of September 11th. They've been announced for 30 years, in countless movies, in countless cartoons. From there, it is a vast theatre stage. So certainly, the theatre it makes suffer, for those who did not see that it was a theatre, and the same, the conscience makes suffer today. That is why we went from love or fear to love or suffering, there is no other choice, as Omri said. And moreover, it is not a choice, it is a story of resolution, first individual, it has been a case for years, and now collective. And the best advice I can give, what I was saying earlier, is, live your life, take care of your body if it needs to be taken care of course, take care of your family if you have a family to take care of course, and that's not an obstacle at all. Believing that you must be alone, not have a husband, or have to raise your children, or not work, or this or that, no, life puts you exactly in what you need. That too is to be accepted. Because there is no better place for everyone, no matter what we say. Sister, where we are? Yes, yes. It is part of what OMA said, it is the principle of acceptance, it is the principle of acceptance, it is acceptance, and acceptance creates crossing, and acceptance creates the dissolution of reticence, especially consciousness. I am no longer even talking about resistance or habits, it is simply the habit of being in a consciousness. We're in this body, but we're also in a consciousness, but we are not the consciousness, or we are all consciences, that is, we are the whole. But the important thing is not to live the whole thing. There are many of you here who have lived it at different moments of their lives, that is, an impression of fusion with everything, but then there is nothing, and it is nothing that is more important, because nothing, which we could call nothing, as Christian Singer said, when there is nothing more, well, there is no more nothing, there is love. This naked love, as I called it, is exactly that, who does not need form, who does not need people, who does not need consciousness, who does not need anything. That's where you're full, never before. This is completeness, resilience, acceptance, embrace, awakening processes. It is not the person who is liberated. It is impossible to liberate a person as long as you have this body. On the other hand, yes, you are free from the person. I do not mean that you are no longer a person, quite the contrary, you are even more human. You are completely invested in this person, but you are no longer fooled. It creates a relaxation, as I said, and this freedom that is total. Maybe we'll stop now, unless you have one last thing to say. Brother? No, it's clear. It's 11:15 p.m. Let's go. Through Jean-Luc Young. Les Transformations. English translation, LMF.